That's okay, I never really know.
Yes, I will, I'd like to appoint Julia as a voting member to, unless there's any objection. Thank you. So I forget that you're here every meeting, and I forget that you're an alternate. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So we all voted. Thank you, Sue, for circulating the minutes. Next item is the treasurer's report.
Okay. I got one piece that I looked at ahead of time, and that was just this sheet about the balance of the budget and things that we spent money on that I can find on another sheet that I got was 300 and, no, that's old. Sorry, that's the wrong thing.
Yeah. It's the most understandable one.
Yeah. The financial summary year-to-date page, that's the one that's most relevant, I think.
Yes, there's not a lot of recent activity.
No, we have 243,000 some odd dollars.
We didn't see the April report, right?
No.
So we didn't see the activity from May previously, right?
Right.
I mean, March.
Carol's work?
That's the only one I don't know. I presume it's, when did the books close for the town? Maybe it's like the time it takes to run all of our end of year report type stuff. I don't remember the fiscal year, how it runs in the town. I thought it was like July or August.
I was going to say, wouldn't it be July 1 to
Yeah.
June 30th?
So that was the only thing that I saw that I was kind of curious. I'm guessing it's Carol in finance.
I can ask.
Because she does all of her stuff. There was a question as to whether or not we would do the check request for the fishing derby before or after they bought the fish, because we could either make the check out to the fishing derby or to the people who actually supply the fish. And I was told, I asked Rich, and he said whatever's easier for you, and I didn't get it deposited to them directly, so I wanted to ask him for the fish supplier information and send it directly to them, so it doesn't have to go through multiple people's hands. It'd be easier, I think. Unless they use a new supplier, and then they have to probably give all the W-2 and all that sort of information to the finance department in order to put them as a vendor. We shall see. But that might be why, well, that is why you wouldn't see that on there, just so everyone's aware. They did also supply us just with the, just for the record, with the Schottmeyer Park donation total to date, and kind of an itemized one as well. I'm not sure if we had the same total last month, but I think there might be a little more. It's currently at $129,651 in that account, which is the purview of the Schottmeyer Park Committee. It's good to know that. Thank you, Andrea.
Yep.
Thanks for help. Next time would be committee and subcommittee reports. Casey, anything for town council?
We met briefly, and we got a report on an MRI update from Chief True, but that was about it for anything to share out.
As I mentioned before, we do not have a planning board rep at the moment. I happen to be at town hall today and stopped by the planning department with a question, and was told that they would actually like input, if we'd like to give it, on proposed zoning changes, and they were distributed to me at that moment. So pass those around quick. Most of this, I don't think pertains to anything the Conservation Commission would be directly interested in. As far as the signage and most of the back of this. But what we may be interested in what the planning director, Diane Hardy, had asked for input if we're interested, is this proposed assisted living overlay district amendment to the zoning ordinance, which it's very specific to assisted living, like a special permit, almost like a open space subdivision is a special use permit. So it's a similar type of overlay district type idea, I guess. So it's specific to these parcels, actually. And so if you look into it a little bit, it kind of talks about where it is, the boundaries of it, what can be done there. The only thing that I saw in it personally, I just got this morning, so I kind of read through it at lunch. Or was it yesterday morning? Sorry, yesterday morning. I wouldn't speak it to get it yesterday morning. But not in the PDF format that I can distribute. Is on page 2. And they talk about the minimum lot size, and they talk about a buffer. The one thing I didn't understand is, so typically they're often, I don't know how it works in this one, but they're subject to underlying zoning regulations. I think unless they're modified usually. Like where it says buffer, there shall be a 75-foot landscape buffer around the perimeter. I don't know what that means, if that means the perimeter of the facility or the perimeter of the parcel as developed, like if they developed up to, like if they cleared up to the lot line, they would have to at least landscape the perimeter. I wouldn't, to me it wasn't clear what the buffer meant. And if it was a parcel perimeter, I'd prefer to see natural wooded buffer as opposed to a landscape buffer. But
This is a bit of a contentious development, isn't it?
this, I don't know. I hadn't been following this at all, so I can tell you. I know there were some plans to do something, like they were going to put there was some sort of contingency where there was going to be a development done out here, or no, as part of the little background, I guess, would be, I just learned this yesterday too, is there was as part of is it a industrial park down there on the other side of the railroad tracks, on the side of 108 across from like where they developed part of the golf course there, where they just they're excavating a bunch of sand out there now. I guess as part of that, there was a plan to build a bridge or something across the railroad. And if they never built it, some land went back to the town. So some of this was the town's land, or is the town's land currently. But there's some sort of deal that might be happening, I guess, as far as assisted living potentially out there. So that's my current understanding, which isn't, I'm sorry for it being not complete, but I wasn't following the
Presumably you're right, but it is town land.
part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
The part, so the way I understand it, so you see how there's like what looks like a road going through, and a bunch of smaller lots on the right-hand side and the east side there. That portion is town land. And the bigger parcel adjacent to the Levante property. That's up there, Larkin tract. I think right where the B1 symbol is about where the old Hampshire Shovel place used to be.
That's owned by the town, or at least was.
Okay. Yeah, the piece in the middle maybe owned by someone else. I'm not
I
positive.
don't know.
And so kind of, if we can supply the planning board with comments on this.
I actually think that's a map of it over there. I saw it when I came in, I just wanna look at it and see if it has more detail.
There is a lot about signs in here too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is mostly about signs.
So yes, this does indicate which parcels are owned by the town and which ones are not. More helpful. So
Pass one of these down, actually. This is-
the purple is what we're looking at, I think, for the most part.
Yeah, there you
So
go. Share
this
water.
is owned by the town, private, but all those lots, like you said, Jeff, are owned by the town. And then, as Drew said, this is also owned by the town.
There's some question as to whether or
And
not
the
that
bonds
was-
of property, like you said.
I think there's some question as to who actually owns maybe this, but
So,
regardless.
there's the road and it's the, if you can't see 108 from out there, it's further out, isn't it? It's not a border on this map.
There were some, I was at some of the meetings, kind of, first shop around park discussions. But part of the master plan rewriting and the master plan giving the ability to potentially create different types of overlay districts and zoning in here. So if you look at the new master plan that they've created recently, you can see some interesting ideas on zoning and land use kind of just to the east of there. And I don't believe that those proposed, it's hard to say, the potential, because the master plan doesn't create anything, just gives a kind of frame to work within. Like, I think it came right up to the edge of that. But there's interesting ideas.
On the eastern
Exactly,
side.
yeah. There's very interesting ideas for development. Stormwater. Pull that up. Thank you.
Just happened to be there, so.
Yeah, so that's kind of the impetus for this.
So when is the planning board looking for input by?
Their meeting was Tuesday, wasn't it? I think where's it next?
It's Tuesday the 9th.
Tuesday, May 9th was their meeting. This is from their meeting the other night. The town council eventually is what votes on this, because the planning board can't really make ordinance. So I can contact Diane and ask her what her, it's either prior to, Casey, do you know if this is on your town council agenda coming up?
Haven't seen it yet, so I'm not sure.
So the only access to this property right now is New Road, that's where the access point would be, right?
Yes, I think the chances of building another crossing the railroad.
This
is zero.
this thin line that we're seeing here, that's the railroad?
Yeah.
Okay, nothing's labeled, so
Right.
this is the railroad bed right here.
Building new access across the railroads.
Yeah.
But they do show, that's what they show, is a road going.
Well, that's what they were supposedly going to build when they created the industrial
I
park,
see,
but they
I see.
didn't, and that's why the town actually got title to that land.
I see.
So it was a contingency thing, like if you don't do this, we get the land. So they did do it, they got the land.
Okay. That's,
So, that's a good question, I didn't ask that. I believe it probably prior to the next meeting, but I can get an answer to that.
it's over, between the two areas, it's over 30 acres of town land. Looks like. Quite a bit of
But I'd be more than happy to, if folks have direct comments right now, I can be more than happy to draft an email to the planning department with comments. Or, you might want time to take it home.
Yeah, I was gonna say, at least for me, it doesn't seem like there's a pressing time need, and based on that, I'd like to have a chance to actually read it.
Yeah.
Send comments.
I think at the end as well, changes to subdivision landscaping might be something that we're interested in as well. As far as entrance design and signage.
Oh, that's what we did.
I'd be curious to know about the water and sewer plants, is that to be connected to the water and sewer? Or are they looking to have a well and septic? I can't imagine they would with a facility. I think it would require sewer and water.
Yeah, that I don't see specifically, see that address, but. So if folks want to read, I can, what I'll do is I'll ask Diane tomorrow when she needs comments by. And then if folks supply me with comments in an individual email, so it's not a group discussion, I can draft an email to her. So I'll ask her the date she needs them by. She's not in tomorrow, right? Is planning department open tomorrow? Town hall's mostly closed.
I guess not.
Just finance? So I'll find out as soon as possible and then let you guys know when we need to have comments delivered by. And then you can assemble them into an email and send it. There was one more thing from the planning board that she mentioned, was that they are, Drew would know more about this actually, I think, sorry, is that they're hoping to have they're going to have someone from the saltwater intrusion into wells and whatnot.
Oh,
They're looking to have someone come in from, I think, from the university to give a discussion, and then they were going to invite the town council, I believe, and the Conservation Commission, planning board, to that. But that's all I know about that. She just wanted me to let folks know that there will be an invitation to that coming. I do not know the date of that is.
I want to say it's the 13th of June, June 13th. So this is related to, there's a PhD student at UNH who did some work related to looking at potential saltwater intrusion into private wells and public water supplies as well for different potential sea level rises, which obviously will change the water level in the bay. And so there's sort of two components of that. One is that a higher water level provides an additional hydraulic head or additional pressure, so it's more likely to drive salt water into aquifers. And then there's also in essence, anytime you pull more from an aquifer, there's a greater gradient to drive into that. So as water usage goes up and sea level goes up, there's potential for increased salinity in wells that are particularly those close to the bay. So this student did an analysis of the different materials in the different layers in different areas in town and looked at potential increases in saltwater intrusion into wells. Not surprisingly, the area of greatest concern are those that are closest to the bay, and particularly out at Moody Point, because they have their own public wells. They have 3 wells out there that serve the Moody Point area, and they already have a bit of a balancing act of blending the water from those 3 wells in order to keep the total dissolved solids below where it's supposed to be. And so any increase in that due to additional salt intrusion would make that more difficult. So there's some interesting analysis, there's some neat maps that have come out of it, and other information, and I think they're going to talk about that at that June 13th meeting.
Do you know what time it is?
Probably 7 o'clock. I don't know for sure, but
Is Is that, what day is that?
That's a Tuesday.
That's
So it must be their regular meeting then?
Yeah, so it's the second Tuesday.
That's true.
Yep.
That's my planning board report. A new rep.
Well done.
So, other subcommittees, once again, I put shot in my park later. So I'll move on to the chairman's report then. There were a bunch of emails circulated regarding learning opportunities, I guess I'll call them. And I didn't print them out to read every one of them here this evening, but I think everyone got the emails. I don't know if folks are interested, but that's all I was really going to say about those, if that's okay with you. I don't want to get into each one because I probably won't be able to make it. Information was circulated. One other thing is so we had an information request from PREPA, so it's like Prep Great Bay. So really, from I guess what it boils down to is it's the granite as in the UNHGIS, the Conservation Lands and Mapping Project, and they wanted these tract data sheets filled out for all conservation properties in town, and they ask a fair amount of information, and I'll say that I didn't put a lot of effort into it, and it went to Diane and myself, and I talked to Diane about it, and it's a fair amount of work to put it together for each property, and so Diane did some work on it and submitted it, and they're like, oh, can you give us the rest of the information? And so one thing that we discussed is perhaps looking for help in filling these out. Perhaps from a consultant that could do it, or our other thoughts were they want it for the grant, do they have funding available, things like that to help put the information together, or do we have someone on commission that wants to do it specifically? I think I might have brought this up once before, like several months ago, just in passing very briefly.
Can I
What
just
are you looking
say,
for?
yeah.
This is one of them. I printed out one to bring, and they were just, I think, sent back.
Is it overly technical or just tedious?
Not really. Some of them ask the different types of interests different groups have.
Oh, okay.
Things like that. I don't really know all of
Are
that.
they looking for, but Diane would help with the mapping part, right? Because they need to know the boundaries, is that, they need to get it into the,
Into the GIS, I think if you tell them the tax map and lot number, they have pretty much every town's tax map and lot. If you go to
okay,
Granite,
so
you can
they
actually
don't have a problem with that, it's just they're looking for the information about the particular property that we might have.
Right.
So do they already have some information for some properties, and they're looking to get a complete set for
They want to
everything, or?
update their database more or less. So they said for properties in town, things that might have changed. Like for Dearborn, they want to know, it's yours now, what interest do you have? Things like that.
And this is how it would
That's-
appear on the map, right? So that would appear as,
Well, I guess
certain
it
color or
could also be
something.
like a newly conserved parcel that would not be in their database, and they would have no way knowing about it unless someone told them.
Right.
So they're trying to keep their database up to date, and I know that is something that Ellen has said to us in the past, and said, this is incorrectly shown. I know that this is not the nature conservancy, this is town, and this is so-and-so. I know there are people that probably know all this information that they're seeking.
Dare I say, Ellen?
I
No, I was gonna say the same thing.
That's what I was thinking, is that she knows. What I was personally thinking is that I was thinking of forwarding Ellen one of the emails and saying, what do you think about this request? And is this something that you know already? It's possible.
Is there a deadline for it, these forms?
There kind of was, but I think they'll take the information and
Yeah, because it's just something that they update and then it's, you know, it's not something that's living on paper, right? I think they could take the update at any time, probably.
Yeah, granted, it's all,
Yeah.
it's GIS, so.
I mean, I would be in favor of if we did have someone like Ellen involved, only from the standpoint of also then, she also then, once it was complete and updated, have it so we could link to it or something on our website so that if someone just wanted to see all the conserved land in Newmarket in one map, they could just click. Because again, I know other towns have this, like Durham has a really nice one, and it's just helpful, I think, from a perspective of someone just interested in what pieces of land are conserved in their town to see. So I think there's an investment, a worthwhile, if we did invest some money to get that done, I think it would be worthwhile.
Her schedule's kind of tight. She said that, she can't, well, I know, we'll probably talk about it later, but she may want to know which takes the priority, that or the map.
Or she might know somebody else that she
Yeah.
could refer to, or we could get some other names.
We could call the people at Granite and see if we can help us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's them. No, I'm just kidding, it's a joke.
Well, I don't know, I mean, maybe they know someone that
Yeah.
they could refer.
How many parcels did they send us this sort of information request on?
What I've seen 4 of them, but I think it was, initially it was a blank form.
Oh.
These are ones I think Diane filled out, the information she knew about and sent in. That's why it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It seems like.
That's why when they initially sent it, I was like, and I think I mentioned this to everyone at a meeting, it was not like a big discussion, I just mentioned passing, there's been a request for information. They went to the planning department as well as us, and it's a lot of information that they want.
Yeah, because this is just set aside open space on Dane Road for developments,
Yeah, that's Boulder, that's the Boulder
Yeah,
Heights
it's not
subdivision.
like Wigan Farm or,
Yeah, it's
I mean, it's not like,
Well, I think this is an example that's been partially filled out.
right.
Yeah, that's, I printed one of the 4 that Diane, she probably, I don't remember which ones they were, but they were just sent back, like, they just sent them back like a couple of days ago, highlighted, saying, what's this
What's
information?
this?
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I can look up the book page and
But
the
they should be
registry
able to get the
website.
acreage already.
Well,
Maybe
they-
not that new one.
Well, you could go to the plan that has to be recorded at the registry. I mean, it's just it's a fair amount of information. It's worthwhile, I'm sure. They'll create a nice database. It'll they can catalog how many acres more accurately than, because like the tax map is going to be super inaccurate showing typically showing the acreage, but if we had a survey and there's a book and page, and they can get a more accurate acreage.
So I think a lot of that is probably cataloged in the open space plan. But it's probably also old because I'm not sure when the open space plan was last modified. But I would guess on the order of a decade ago. I think I still have a copy of that. But that had a listing of various conserved properties in town and what the relative status was, and who had executive interests and all that sort of stuff.
2002.
Book and pages.
2002.
15 years ago.
Yeah.
Book and page information. You know,
I don't
tourist
know.
lands, it's a fair amount of info. It's not a bad idea. It's just a lot of data that they're looking to collect. You've got to find the folks with the time.
Yeah, grad students.
Yeah.
Senior undergrads.
I'm going to say probably those Piscataqua Region Estuary
Project.
Partnership Alliance or something like that. It's Piscataqua Region, folks. Sorry, I don't. When they watch it, they'll cringe that I don't know what it stands for. Sorry, I apologize. could be some of their thought that the towns have this at their fingertips as well. Depending on the size of the town and the staff, the town, it might be true. So. Because when I was there, Diane and I spoke about this, and we both said, I bet Ellen knows this. So I was thinking about sharing this request with her to see what she thinks about it. I don't know if folks are opposed to that. If not, I will just do that.
I have no.
Just to see what she thinks and the best way to proceed. So we'll do that. One thing that I need to mention, to fess up about, as usual, I do this once a week. I did not, Dale, who was at our meeting last month, I sent out saying I was going to try to get to meet with him. It was a week my family was away. I thought I was going to have an opportunity to get out and do that, and I did not. So,
Well, that was at Heron Point.
yes, so that, I need to get a hold of him this week or next week to set up a time. And I will CC everyone on the email so that we all are in the loop on the discussion.
Sounds good.
So I apologize, Dale. We still want your help. Appreciate all volunteer efforts.
The only thing, he didn't mention this, but I did hear from Mike Hoffman too, that the residents at the mobile home park, which I forget the name of, from which you access Heron Point, have been complaining lately about late night use, after hours use, against the rules use of the Heron Point parking lot. There have been people driving in there later at night when they shouldn't be, and I don't know what they're doing. But, so, there was some question about, is there anything that could be done, obviously the town doesn't now want to put a gate there because then somebody's gonna open and close the gate, and they don't have the manpower to have someone do that. So, I don't know if this group has any ideas about anything we could do to help them.
I would encourage them to call the police.
Yeah,
Yeah, is there a sign that says
Yes, there's a
Dawn
sign
Dusk?
posted there that
it
says.
does say that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does.
That's kind of what I said to Mike too, but I just thought I'd pass it along anyway to this group since he brought it up to me.
Yeah, I know that we had, so I don't know how, maybe it's cyclical, right? Because we had issues there years ago and then didn't hear anything for a while. I think we had vandalism issues, didn't hear anything for a while. Yeah, I don't know. As far besides like treatment.
Other than I have been there once early in the morning, and there's this time of year particularly, there can be some fishermen that show up there to access the river. That's about all I've ever seen.
I can't imagine they're disturbing them. You
I
drive
think
in,
it's
fish,
just,
you leave.
yeah, I think it's the cars are so close to the homes there
Yeah.
that they the headlights literally come right in, I think, so that's probably part of it.
You can see people go in there to fish regardless of the hour. Dude.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like tidal.
Yep,
Yeah.
striped bass fishermen
Yeah.
fish at all hours.
In the dark of night, you're not going to see a sign either, unless it's closed or
Yeah,
on the trail.
let you sign it.
Parking lot, but
Well, it's their responsibility to know.
it
But,
is.
are they complaining about like noise and such?
I think it's more the driving in and out, it sounded
Oh,
like
okay.
according to Mike.
Okay.
But again, I think Drew's right, that's what I kind of said too, is call the police.
I think so too. And if it's a fisherman or someone, they'll just say, "Geez, I didn't realize," and modify their behavior a little bit. If it's people up to no good, then also modify their behavior. there's an invitation, I believe, for the New Hampshire Lakes 2017 Lakes Congress. Just opens. And I don't know what it means about. I think it's about keeping water clean, more or less. Runoff management, wildlife conflicts, watershed planning, and such. Thursday, June 1st and Friday, June 2nd. Looks pretty interesting, but I'll pass it around to folks who are interested. As usual, we help fund things such as that. And Great Bay Matters as well, so folks can look at that or take it. But that is it for the chairman's report. Okay, the next item, the first item of new and old business is we were made aware, Mike Hoffman, the town code enforcement officer, is aware that there's been some encroachment into one of the buffers at the Boulderbrook subdivision on Dave Road, where they have removed 2 trees beyond the no-cut boundary. And the thought is one was about a 10-inch caliber hardwood, or so to diameter, and the other is approximately 20-inch, which is believed to be a white pine. The white pine is reported to be, I have not done a sidewalk or not looked at it. The white pine is reported to be about right on the boundary, perhaps. And it could potentially have been considered a hazard tree due to its proximity to future homes. But they had never approached the code enforcement officer to seek any approval to remove the tree within the buffer. The hardwood tree is reported to be about 10 feet into the buffer from the boundary of the buffer. And there's evidence that some boundary marks, one of the boundary marks was potentially run over by a skidder, which may have led to confusion as to where the boundary actually was, but you would think a skidder would not be driving in the wooded buffer. The developer has offered to plant some trees as a restoration mitigation. So the code enforcement officer was looking to us for perhaps some input as to a remedy to the situation or thoughts on the situation. I believe that the town planner had also informed the developer that there is the potential for the commission to go out and view the entire subdivision and walk around, see how things look, kind of review the buffer boundaries. It's an additional attempt to ensure that they're being respected. I did send a personal perspective reply to Mike that was not on behalf of the Conservation Commission. I didn't share it with you guys, but so just I guess I don't want to weight people's perspectives on it. That's why I didn't send it out, and I didn't reply as a member of the commission either, because I figured we should reply as a group. So that's kind of the situation out there at the moment.
Where's Boulderbrook again?
This is off of Dame Road.
Oh, it's up there.
Yeah, the one up on the hill. We talked about it a few times.
Yeah.
It's a
I forgot that was
lot
the name of it. I was just thinking of it as Dame Road. So
Mhm.
I should write that.
So I'll jump in. So I'm disappointed that there's cutting in the buffer no cut zone. Obviously you can't bring back the trees. I think we should ask for something, but I'm not sure what we should ask for. I think doing nothing is the wrong answer. So I think we should ask for something. What exactly, I'm not sure.
To me, I'm especially slightly frustrated over the situation because they were granted a waiver for a reduced buffer. And to not take the time and care to respect their reduced buffer, which was significantly reduced in some areas. And
I mean, do you think that might be where the confusion came from? Like if they're not aware of where the boundaries are originally, how can they know where the reduced boundary is?
Well, they were, so we did receive the confirmation from the planning department that the buffer posts were in place, like several months ago before the development of the subdivision had begun, or construction started.
So they were aware of that?
Yeah, and like Mike said in his email, that there was a, because they put carcinite markers, so they put markers in the ground and say, here's the no cut buffer on those lots on the left-hand side of the road as you pull in. I believe that's where this occurred. He says that one of those was, he found one run over, that had been one of those that had been run over, so by a skidder.
I feel like we should go out there and look. I don't know. I mean, you said it seems unlikely that a skidder would be able to get back in there.
No, what I was saying is, I think it's interesting that a skidder was back in there.
Right, well, that's what I mean. Why are they driving that machine in an inappropriate area? I mean, from your standpoint, what are they up to? And they're running over the markers. They're meant to be seen, and they're not even looking. You drive that thing, and licensed and qualified, run the thing over, and then cut 2 big trees down.
And Drew's perspective to me is a hard one, because it's what do you do? You're not going to replace a 20-inch white pine tree in the next 25, 30 years or whatever. So, and like Mike said, that the developer offered to plant some trees as a mitigation, but they're going to plant native trees, and then who's going to take care of them? We had another site where someone supposedly planted a bunch of trees, and like none of them grew. None of the only ones that grew were blueberry bushes. So I mean, not saying replanting is a bad thing, but sometimes in that instance it was enforced to reseed for the most part, because it was all sand pit and cleared. And in this instance, white pine, if there are white pines around, you come up in my yard like crazy. So I'm sure the trees will reseed themselves. But
At the bottom of the email, he's talking about red pine from the New Hampshire nursery. So he's talking about red pine as widely used for reforestation and gravel pit reclamation. So he may be suggesting that, rather than just an old white pine, which may or may not grow.
I'm not concerned about a red pine not growing.
I don't even see, he said red pine, or is that when you click the link, does it go to a red pine?
It's at the bottom of the
Red
line.
pine is a fast growing, non-native species.
It seems like a tough situation though, because in order to enforce more, we've only got the one code enforcement officer, so we can't really have any, can't do anything that way. Plant some trees seems like best and only thing you can say.
More mature trees would also make more damage. As they try to get them.
Write a strongly worded letter.
Yeah.
So how did we find out about this? Did they
Because
just?
Mike went out there.
Yeah, I don't know about planting a wildlife mix. Like wildflowers, I'm not sure what it means. If that, you can plant a mix of shrubbery, shrubs that are definitely wildlife shrubs. But
What was the other tree? White pine, what else?
I didn't see a red pine suggested here on June.
It's on the bottom of my email.
Yeah, the one that you sent us.
The one that you sent to us. He's suggesting it out of the NewHampshireNursery.com site. Yeah.
It's a link. It's a link.
It was a link, but he linked it to, and put
Oh,
that
you
in.
might have
Oh, that's what I was saying.
or especially mixes from the New Hampshire link that is. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's what I
then-
was saying, if you click the link, it takes you to a red pine.
Oh, okay.
No, that's what I'm asking, because I don't see the, I'm like,
No,
where
okay.
do I see the link? Yeah, that's the, that I printed, because that's the actual agreement.
Okay.
Because remember, I think I circulated that to you like a few weeks ago, maybe the open space, the agreement between the town and the developer for that open space, because it was finalized, I guess. But either way, I mean, to,
I guess my recommendation would be, yes, sure, replant a couple of trees, but also if Mike is asking for a recommendation, I might say, would it be possible for you maybe to go back out there and check and see if you, I mean, if you go back, if he goes out there again and there's, you know, they're not being careful about what they're doing, that's my concern, is that they think that this isn't something they have to worry about.
Are there guidelines in place that if the developer oversteps, goes beyond what they're supposed to, or is there some kind of fine that the town imposes on them or anything?
not that I know of, I know, in the past what we've done, like,
So
when there was
let's
a
just
wetland.
plant some more trees and thank you.
Well, sometimes we've
No, why do we
we've
even
sought
have
the,
rules?
we've sought the help of a professional in the field. And say, you can call a forester and say, they've destroyed, I mean, for 2 trees, it might not reach that level, but it's like if they cleared a fair amount, if we go look and see that there's been a lot of damage, you say, how do we restore and repair this? Like we had a soil scientist go out to the wetland areas that were cleared on another site and said, give us a recommendation as to what to do to rehabilitate this site. And they wrote a plan to rehabilitate the site, and the person was supposed to implement that. It didn't really work out so well.
And
Because it becomes enforcement over time, and something like that.
would they at least have to pay for the consultant person?
Yes.
They did.
I mean, we could mention that too, that if they were to do more damage, we might have to have a consultant come in and,
I mean, is it timber trespass? That's a dodgy word, but
What did it say?
statement, but, I mean, it's like crossing a lot line, but it's not a lot line. It's a jurisdictional line to say, this is a line that we drew with you on a piece of paper and said, don't cut any trees over this line.
I mean, clearly, they don't understand, or else didn't understand what was going on. I mean, as far as boundaries go, is there any way that we can go out there and put some colored, fluorescent red colored sand where they can't go, like make it extra clear where they cannot go temporarily in something that's biodegradable?
I think you could, I think you're right though, you could request that all the markers that have been disturbed are replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And that the line is, during the period of construction, the line is evidence such that it is unmistakable.
Yeah, because I think that,
You know?
yeah,
So like you
Yeah,
said,
double
cover with
flag.
orange flags.
yeah,
And then after construction's done, pull them all down.
yeah.
they have a duty to, follow the requirements.
Actually, they did that on my property on Dean Road. There's this wetland area right where they don't want the house to be. And they put red flags. I don't know who did it, but there were red fluorescent flags all around it so that our builder didn't even dare to go anywhere near.
I think it's a lesson for the future of
That's
the
what
fact
I
that,
feel like.
the fact that it comes into play that they could be, and the same thing I saw with Rockingham, where you can classify a tree as a hazard tree. If you take what we require in an open space as a 100-foot buffer and you reduce it to 40 feet, and you've got 80-foot tall white pine trees, and occupying the buffers, every single tree in the buffer, because you can put your house right up against that buffer, there's no setback for structure from the buffer. And every tree in the buffer now could potentially be considered a hazard tree. You cut down every tree in the buffer. I mean, part of the reason that you have a 100-foot buffer requirement is to create a space that can handle things like that. It's just, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
We do hear a lot of developers wanna push the limit with that buffer. Look at this
Everyone
little
is
corner
coming.
we don't like, and can you
think
whittle that
everyone that's
down.
come to
Exactly,
us,
and,
everyone that's come to the commission since I've been on the commission has been for buffer reduction, every subdivision.
yeah,
So maybe we just don't approve them.
I mean, we said that at the last one we were like, we don't like doing this.
right, that we really don't like doing.
We said it, we did it two in a row, and now we're setting a precedent
Yeah.
that this is what you can do. You just come to
Right.
us and we'll say, sure.
Yeah, now we got spanked.
But we didn't, and I was super frustrated. It took me a while to write Mike an email back that was relatively measured.
So maybe, like you said, let this be a lesson for the future, for us. Like, we'll do everything we can to make it crystal clear with the flags and with maybe a walkthrough with the person and like just be
Well,
anal about
Yeah,
it.
whoever's running the
Well,
skids.
yeah, I kind of, it's their duty to, it's not on us to draw it. We approve it, they're supposed to follow it.
Yeah,
They knew that they went over the buffer. I don't kind of doubt that. And, so, yeah, it does give you pauses to whether we want to do it again, but, so.
It happened on the golf course as well, where buffer markers were driven over and knocked down or whatever.
What about the hazard tree? Has that come up yet?
I don't know, but there was a lot of talk about it when they were doing it. I would have had to recuse myself from the discussion, but I remember there was a lot of talk about there's going to be these tiny little lots with houses jammed into the most mature pine trees, and it's going to be super dangerous to have all these. There was definitely discussion around the subject. I don't know if there have been trees taken down that were considered hazard trees. I think that would be a question for the code enforcement officer. I wasn't even thinking about it. And this, as I started to read it, and I'm like, could have been considered a hazard tree. Wait a minute, every tree could be considered a hazard tree.
how many hazard trees are there that need to be, is it a lot? In these projects, like maybe they should have to, if they're gonna identify something as a hazard tree, come here and get our permission to take down the hazard tree.
I think we should consider that when they ask for buffer reduction.
Yeah, say, okay, buffer reduction granted, but we get to say for any hazard trees.
That's tough. What if we say you can't cut that hazard tree down and it goes right through someone's house?
Or if they want the
Well,
reduce
then
the
they
buffer.
can't,
That's why they
I don't know
were
anything about
Yeah,
building.
it is.
Well, that's part of the hazard part that's probably driving it. Because insurance companies are hesitant to insure your home if they feel like there is a large tree that could potentially come down that's close. Now, they're usually, it's gotta be pretty close for them to usually take action like that. So, I don't know if when they say hazard tree, who's terming that? Is it the developer? Is it an insurance company? Who is it? I would like to hear, where they're getting that opinion. Because usually the tree has to be almost adjacent to the house for the insurance company to say something. They don't want anything where a branch is overhanging a house. They're gonna automatically say you gotta remove that or we're not gonna insure the house. But if it's not overhanging the house, they're not gonna tell you to take a tree down. So, a hazard tree.
If it's a huge white pine and it's right on the buffer in the building, because some of those, the building envelope was like, they show the proposed houses was like right against the buffer pretty much. So if you can't cut the tree down, that's on the line of the buffer. And it's any type of tree, branches on that side of the tree or whatever, I don't know. I personally don't know how they consider, just like you're mentioning, like I don't know who would make that judgment.
Well, clearly they did.
Yeah.
So, or someone came out.
But I would consider just walking out there.
I think so.
The feeling I got was that we could go out there whenever we want to.
Okay.
I don't know which one do a walk as a group or simply notice a sidewalk. Or folks can just go out on their own. I think it'd be good to go out there perhaps with Mike, with the code enforcement officer, to see where it is. That's just setting up a time that works.
Yeah, I'm
Can try to
curious.
do that for an evening.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then we could do it sort of at 6:30 or something. It's light out.
We'll move on from that, and unless anyone has anything else to add to it. The next item is the Serve with Liberty volunteer work trip that we just did to Piscasset River, Loisel, to complete some invasive species removal. And I don't know, Patrick, you want to talk about it, or you want to pass the minute?
Well, I think it was a big success. We got through most of I think all of the plants that you had previously tagged were removed, and then additional plants. I think you and Drew did a great job of providing background and education to the group so that they learned something about it. I heard that from numerous people that participated in the project. They said things like, well, I'll never walk through the woods again without thinking about this. This is great. And it's a good, and they were very enthusiastic. I never heard anybody complain, as we went further into the forest, into the wetter areas, they continued to, even when we thought we had some things that we maybe couldn't remove, they kept going. So I was impressed, and I thought they did a great job, and the weather held out just long enough for us to really make a pretty good dent. Anyone who walks out there, I think, would know that there's a lot less of the barberry out there than there was before.
I would say burning bush.
And burning bush. Burning bush, I think, is a little harder to spot because it can blend in a little better, but that barberry was greatly reduced out there, I thought. Good job.
It was a fantastic job.
But I think they enjoyed the other little side trips that we took them on, show them the vernal pool. They were definitely appreciated, getting a little bit more information about the area and what makes it unique. So I thought that was good that they got to see that as well.
Yeah, so we got to see the wood duck with the eggs.
Oh, that's cool.
Up on the
That's
boulder.
good.
I was impressed. I had no idea that thing was there, and I sit on that rock relatively frequently.
Is nesting on the boulder?
Yeah, there's a cavity in the base of an ash tree,
Oh.
and we're removing a bunch of burning bush around it. There was a burning bush underneath the forming mat of little ones, and so we're just like pick, and I said, I think there might be something living in that cavity in that tree, because it was like little, looked like those bark missing around the bottom edge of the hole in the bottom of the tree. And I looked in there and I saw something white, and then I saw something move, and I was like, whoa, it's an egg. Those are 2 eggs and a duck.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's well up. I mean, it's up on a rock. Yeah. I don't want too many visitors, so I don't want to give away exactly where it is. Anybody goes there frequently, there's not that many ash trees and shit from the area. Trees. I thought the folks were amazing. They, we got to some spots that were just nasty and wet and not pleasant spots. And I was apprehended. If we want, they can keep going. They're like, which one? Show it to us. Point it out. And they just went right for it. No apprehension. Everyone did great. Julia was there. Thank you.
Option B was to sit in the cube all day.
Right.
Thank you to DPW for letting us borrow a bunch of shovels. So we borrowed a bunch of shovels from them. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I never would have thought we would pull that many plants out. The soil was in the perfect condition.
Yeah, that was very good.
Yeah, it was damp and not too wet, except down in the water. The ones that the giant multiflora rose that pulled out of the water. It
Oh,
looks.
good for them though.
Yeah, it looks. It looked mucked up after, but it's going to look so much better in a few months that you don't even know anyone was in there. And, it was literally like the size of this table.
There was
Wow.
enormous.
It was a link that was solid 8 or 10 feet across. The base was only like this big, but the thing was like sprawling
Yeah, and
monster.
prickly though.
Yeah, the multi-flower rows are very, very nasty, nasty plants. I think that would be a good idea if we got something to the town administrator to put in the town weekly newsletter, just a thanks to Liberty Mutual. And like I said before, I did not get a group photo, which I wish I did, but it's okay.
Next year.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, I thought it was a great day, it was a great crew, and look forward to doing it again next year. We should definitely host at least one activity again next year.
Yeah,
And then the at least is the key.
Yeah, well, I think getting our thing out there right when it opens, so having our announcement in there the day registration began was key. It doesn't hurt to have it either on a Friday or a Monday. I will say that. I
That's
think
for sure.
Friday's probably the best day. People they like the idea of doing a project on a Friday. It's a nice way to end the week, so. I would definitely have that as a takeaway. We could do it on a Friday again. I think we'll have no problem filling it up. And we talked about we could do possibly 2 groups.
I'd like to see it. I mean, we got so much done at the Scottsdale Blazell this year that just a small group to go back and clean up what may have sprouted in some of the areas we did 3 years ago. And then focus us. I don't know, the power of 8 or 9 people plus the power of 11 or less for them was just unbelievable. So it makes me think about other areas we thought were unsurmountable. Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of
yeah.
man-hours.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
thought Wigan Farm would definitely be a good location.
Good thing to think about for next year.
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, for December and November, whenever they first contact. Remember that?
Yes.
Don't blow up that email.
Yeah.
5 months before the date that you're going to do it. It's actually 5 months late. The next item I have on the agenda here is discussion about Shotmeyer Park and the status, where it's at. We have had a meeting since our last meeting. So I think I'm going to go over the simple things first, and then talk about the deed last, just to get them out of the way. But, so I reported on the status of one of the goals was to put a bridge or a dock or whatever. So the numbers on a dock came back, and I don't think I gave them last time. It was $16,000 for the dock system that they're discussing, which has a 2 semi-permanent, but I think removable docks that come in from either side of the cove, with a floating dock in the center. And that's the current thought. It's about $16,000, potentially with a T shape to it, so something might stick out into the river a little bit, not into the river, but out away from the main platform. Excuse me. With a potential, that does not include the cost of a potential like kayak roller thing, so people could get in a kayak up out of the water and roll into the water. So that's that, and then so the maintenance cost, I didn't say this last month, because I know I asked again, okay. All right. The maintenance cost that we had requested the price on was $500 to $600 per year to maintain, to put it in and take it out of the water each year. So it counts 2 site visits each year, and that's what it currently costs to pay someone to put it in each spring and take it out each fall.
And where do they put it when they take it out?
Probably up just on the shore.
Just trying to.
Yeah. So that was one question we had. It's a fair amount of money each year. There will be, it's projected to have a significant amount of money remaining after the park is developed. With 129,000, roughly $130,000 currently, and the purchase price in the low 60s. The low 60s, it's a lot of money left over for park maintenance for the future. So, anybody has comments on that, I can bring it back to our meeting. That will probably be in 2 weeks.
The only questions I have are, and I'm sure they've looked into this, is there permitting?
Yeah, they're looking at
required
all that.
for docks? And, I don't know, if a river has a different, I mean, the water level doesn't go up and down as much there because of the dam, but it still must go up and down to some extent, and I don't know how that would affect the docking system like that, so.
The center would float, and then it would move, and then it would have a ramp that would move with the floating center. And obviously the water level would fluctuate, like you're saying. I don't know how deep that cove is, but their thought is to have it closer to the river than further back up in the cove. So you'd be in the deeper portion of it. And like I said, I don't know the depth. I haven't spent time back in that area like some of the other folks
Almost like a
have.
swamp.
feel like it's,
The upper end of it at least, yeah. So that's
it
one
would
thing.
be nice if they had the money.
Yeah.
Also, yeah.
So I can ask about the permitting status. I can mention, I can see what people's thoughts are on water. It's kind of my, kind of in between, so. I'll bring those up. Elizabeth Dudley has volunteered to create the landscaping that would go around the parking area, and actually also, she said that she would volunteer to do the site design for the parking area, the driveway entrance, and she said surveyed a little additional topography so that you can use a surface to work with to aid in that design. So that's very, very nice of Elizabeth. She was at our meeting, expressed some ideas. We requested that, I kind of requested on behalf of the commission that she incorporates native plants into any plantings that she does. There may be cultivars that survive a little better in that sort of manicured setting, but she's very familiar with working with native plants. Make all efforts to do so. One other thing I want to point out was the state has, I don't know if folks have noticed, but the state has started to build they do have a drainage easement through a portion of the area that will become, slated to become part of the park. And so they are starting to build that. They've taken down some trees, and I've heard that there was perhaps an excavator out there starting to install some drainage facility.
Yeah, you can see it, it's pretty extensive.
Yeah, I've been up to that at the town yet, but they can daylight a pipe right up the edge of the cove if they want to. See how that kind of pans out.
Yeah, there's significant changes.
I saw the trees gone,
Yeah,
that's the last time I saw it.
dramatic.
Yeah, a little less sheltered from the road back there, on that side anyway.
There's a lot of material brought in as well.
Looks like a
Rip-rap. Yeah, the state goes for it when they do it. That's for sure. If they wouldn't put a riprap area in there, and put a riprap area in, so they'll fix it next year. One other item is that the ideas for a split rail fence, for the most part, been set aside in favor of granite posts and intermittent spacing, kind of to be determined. I'm thinking maybe 50, maybe 100, maybe 150 feet, kind of see how things look. Part of that came from a meeting with the abutter who lives next door, didn't really want to see a split rail fence running, right through what it appears as an open field now, and that abutter would prefer granite posts set through.
Where would the split rail fence and or granite posts go? Like, do they mark sort of the edge of the easement, or do they run along the northern boundary with the abutter's property?
So the area we discussed was the northern boundary with the property.
Okay.
So to kind of here's the boundary line, 'cause the property boundary is the easement boundary in that area. As far as between, I think that we discussed that we might just, it was kind of at the meeting, as the meeting was ending, I brought up to a couple of people in passing, so I don't really want to say yes or no about the remainder of the area we talked about fencing. But I personally, I don't know if this is what the commission would like to say, I did express interest from my perspective on a split rail fence perhaps at the edge of the parking area. Or just to say, because right on the other side of the parking area, this is supposed to be the sitting garden, you know? To kind of be like, here's the edge of the parking area, here, with like a gap in the fence.
Define the garden a little bit.
And the kiosk, whatever, there, and then the garden area. Or sitting area, as they're kind of
That's pretty typical of conservation areas. Parking, fence.
yeah.
Yeah, my biggest thing is fences require maintenance.
True,
I'm lazy, I don't like fences.
true.
The one at Piscasset hasn't been
Yeah,
too
you did
bad.
that last time.
It has
Yeah,
one more
split
that needs to be
rails.
replaced now. They are a pain in the
Yes, they are.
True.
I'll go buy a poster or a rail to replace the one rail that's missing, and it'll take me like a half an hour to go get it, and then a half an hour to figure out how to get it in place.
Get it back in.
Mhm.
It's
Strap it
so
on.
difficult to get it there.
Play with a child. Get it in there.
That's right. And that'll be a lot cheaper, by the way, as well.
Grant post?
They're only about, is it like $250 each?
Wow.
Or something like that. But installation will have a cost, but split rail fences are quite expensive.
And then if
They're
there,
super-
it's not going anywhere,
Right.
we don't have to worry about it too much.
Should take less, theoretically would take less maintenance, yes. Dick Lord of the LRAC has been working on the kiosk sign design, so he's been putting some effort into that, and showed us a couple of map ideas that he had and ideas for stories to put on there. So he's been working on that aspect. Doing well, I think. Nothing really hard on paper yet at all to share. The other thing I wanted to point out was I got clarification personally from the town administrator on the expenditure of funds by the Shotmeyer Park Committee, which is something that I'm kind of interested in figuring out. There are a couple of conflicting stories from different people. But the town administrator assured me that we do not need to vote on expenditures by the Shotmeyer Park Committee. And that essentially what it's going to be considered is that the Shotmeyer Park Committee controls donated funds, and any improvements that are constructed on behalf of the park will then be donated to the Conservation Commission. So Shotmeyer Park Committee does not need to go out to bid. They're not under the same restrictions that a town entity would be. They're just strictly a volunteer group working with donated funds that they will later donate to the town. And the town is simply a receiver of the funds, a place to hold them, I guess.
Do we have to track what's spent?
We do not have to.
Like have it on a report or anything?
We are getting reports, as you can see, so we know what the money's being spent on. Actually, no money has been spent yet, so except for the
That's all I was
mailings and
wondering, we
everything.
don't know yet, so.
But nothing has, we'll always have representation. I've been at each meeting and we have not voted to spend any money, except for I think the Conservation Commission paid for the letters and mailing.
Yeah.
But those are the only funds that we've expended so far. So we will be aware of, and we'll continue to get reports, because the town is still going to track the funds and make sure they don't disappear, obviously, which I have no inclination that they would. But yes, the money is still being tracked and watched. Because obviously the town is quite involved at this point. They're going to be accepting potentially the deed, using their counsel to write the deed. So that is the last item to talk about. I don't know if folks got a chance to read the deed that I circulated the other day. I printed out a couple of copies. I only have 3 copies that I printed 3 by accident. But I have two that folks don't have if they want to look at.
Okay.
No. Does anyone have comments on the deed, on what's in it regarding conservation, use limitations? Anything?
Did you have any?
I made a lot of comments regarding the structure of the deed, the legal description I reviewed as a surveyor. I just said survey, and I made lots of edits to the legal description of the boundaries of easement areas. One concern that was brought up was the signage. Was the signage size requirement in here? Where is it? I didn't mark this up. There's a signage limitation. So it says, no sign on the property shall exceed 24 square feet in size.
That's big, 6x4.
So 6x4 though, our kiosks
Yeah,
are
bigger than
bigger than that. So that was one thought.
Is that the sign or kiosk? Are they different?
I don't know. Fair thoughts on that. One of the other.
Small kiosk is okay with me.
Yeah.
That's fine too, and this is, it's not like the sign that, so like our typical sign that says like Wigan Farm on it, or Piscasset Zell or something like that, they're probably that wide, that long.
5x3.
So if we wanted to install something like that near the road, I guess we could, and it would not be greater than 24 square feet. One of the other items that was thought about for discussion is so as part of this deed, under use limitations, we need to develop a written management plan. The Conservation Commission is required to develop a written management plan. This would come to later, and we typically hire a professional to do that. But there are certain things that shall be included listed here in the management plan. And one of them is the mowing of the existing fields a minimum of 2 times per year. And there was some discussion that, or some of our other properties, we mow 1 time a year. Do we want to request that this be written? Because once this is a recorded deed, we cannot, it's almost impossible to modify. So we can suggest the change, but they don't, it doesn't have to be accepted by the American Community Church.
What's the language? We write no more than 2 times, and then recommend that they just do it once? And what about mowing a trail? We've talked about that, like at Wigan Farm, instead of the tamped down narrow trail. And who's gonna mow, the town?
We're allowed to maintain trails and related infrastructure. So the mowing would be like the greater field, not just the trail.
And it says a minimum of 2 times.
I think a minimum of 1 time is probably good.
And I would say maximum of 2 times.
Yeah,
I would like
yeah.
to see, I'd like to see once a year.
Right, ideally.
And that would be in late fall, right? Because the birds, if there are any birds that are using